It's November 16th, 1990. Home Alone just released in theaters.
What else could we be forgetting?
And alongside a cast featuring stars like John Candy, Catherine O'Hara, and Joe Pesci, there was newly minted child megastar Macaulay Culkin.
You guys give up, or you're thirsty for more?
Yet, lesser known and seemingly just as gifted was the performance of the younger cousin. At the time, people didn't really make the connection. And of course, why should they? This was the older brother's movie. Little did anyone know that nearly 3 decades later, he'd become one of the most intriguing actors in the entire industry.
And the Oscar goes to Kieran Culkin, A Real Pain.
There's a lot to love about Kieran Culkin.
This is your first nomination? No, second. Look it up, man.
Not just in the way he acts, but in the way he carries himself.
She goes, I guess I owe you a third kid. And I turned to her and I said, really, I want 4. She said, I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar. Love of my life, ye of little faith. I love you. And let's get cracking on those kids. What do you say? I love you.
There's no heavy armor, no forced polish.
Yeah, I just came from set. I'm actually wearing costume.
No trace of that over-rehearsed actor speak you get in press tours.
The other people on the cast said you're the biggest cursor.
I never had a filter since I was a kid.
He talks like a guy who didn't expect to end up here, who still doesn't quite buy the hype, and who'd probably rather be home playing video games than at an awards show.
My wife and I did a shot of tequila with Mario Lopez. Definitely feeling that. The whole speech is gone. Rip it, Kieran. You're doing fine.
And yet, here he is, celebrated, respected.
I wasted all my time hugging everybody. I love you all so much.
The very thing that made him seem like an outsider for so long is what made him unforgettable once the right role landed in his lap.
I was nominated for a Golden Globe like 20 years ago. When that moment passed, I sort of remember thinking I'm never going to be back in this room again. Thanks to Succession, I've been in here a couple times. It's nice, but I sort of accepted I was never going to be on the stage, so this is a nice...
Kieran was born into the kind of chaos most people spend a lifetime recovering from.
You've said, I'm one quick little misstep away from being that person.
Yeah, I feel that's good.
His father was a former Broadway actor turned infamously controlling stage dad. His mother worked a series of jobs to keep the lights on, while the dad ran the household with a strange mix of ambition and fear. There were 7 kids in total. The family lived in a modest apartment in New York, barely scraping by.
We lived in a tight space where it was just 7 of us running around.
All the while being shuttled into casting offices.
The hard part was kind of being away from home and the family sometimes. My brother and I would be working at the same time in different cities.
Macaulay hit the big time first, and when he did, everything would change. Suddenly, the Culkin name meant something, just not to Kieran.
Kind of have a memory of being about 5 or 6 years old saying, I want to be an actor. That little guy was right, but took a while.
Because Macaulay wasn't just famous, he was Home Alone famous. Kieran was the afterthought. He'd pop up as the cousin, the little brother, the kid in the background with a reaction shot, and that stuck for years. The truth is, he didn't seem particularly bothered by that. He wasn't chasing the same dragon.
It's funny because when you're like 9 years old, you can't really be, or I couldn't be like starstruck. It was just like going to work. It was like, oh, cool.
While Macaulay was being shuttled from one franchise to another, Kieran was quiet, almost reluctant.
There was like a murky period in my early 20s where it was like, I don't know if this is what I want to do, and I don't know if it was enjoyable then.
Like it was just easier to say yes than to argue. But what started as indifference slowly turned into a kind of resistance. He didn't crave the spotlight.
I think I was not good at it. To me, it was just fun.
You get the sense he was always watching, always listening, waiting for something more real. That kind of quiet observation pays off in ways people don't see until much later. It's the actor's version of studying the game from the bench. He didn't waste time trying to fit in with the heartthrobs or reinvent himself for teen magazines.
He left the room and the director and I turned to each other. I was like, that was unbelievable. This guy is amazing. I just had this image, I think in my unconscious, or this feeling of being around a guy who's so funny, who's so magnetic, and who doesn't kind of give a shit about, at that point, like being polite or being like the obsequious auditioning actor of like, you know, so happy to be here.
He stayed within the margins, played his hands slow, and somewhere in all that stillness, he figured out what kind of actor he actually wanted to be. Not someone screaming to be looked at, but someone who earned your attention by never overplaying it.
Culkin got praise for Igby, but he wasn't sure he wanted to keep acting.
I feel like any rational person got to experience fame secondhand, they would not pursue it.
Igby Goes Down was a turning point. The film gave him the keys to a character that mirrored a lot of what people suspected about his own upbringing.
If there were a god, he'd have acted a lot sooner.
Cynical, sharp, disillusioned with the adult world.
I'm preparing to leave.
Where do you want to go?
Far away.
But he didn't play it for edge, he played it with honesty. You could see the weariness underneath the snark.
So what do? Paint?
I'm a performance artist.
So you don't paint?
It wasn't a performance built on punchlines, it was built on restraint. Suddenly, the kid who spent years in the corner of the frame was dead center.
Making it as a grown-up actor meant, well, learning how to act. Culkin had to unlearn the tricks that had served him so well as a kid.
Yet, what's wild is how quickly people moved on. You deliver a performance like that and the machine usually kicks into gear. Offers then come in, studios circle. But with Kieran, there was a kind of weird silence. Not because he wasn't good, but because he wasn't marketable in the way that Hollywood likes to package people.
Sorry, burping, indigestion.
He didn't have the clean-cut edge or the manufactured mystique. There was no immediate pivot into major franchises or leading man status. Instead, Kieran did what he always did. He moved on, worked here and there, stayed mostly off the radar. Not out of failure, but out of disinterest.
He worked on stage and only sporadically on film for years.
He wasn't playing the game, he was living a life. Got married, became a father.
And of course, my beautiful wife, Jazz, 2 amazing kids, Zissou and Wilder Wolf.
And through all of that, the work never stopped, but it never screamed either. This is where most stories taper off, a flash of brilliance followed by quiet exits. But Kieran had something in his back pocket most actors never find: timing. Years after Igby, when most of his generation had been chewed up by the system, he walked into succession like he'd been waiting for it the whole time.
On the first day, it was like, before I figure out who this guy is and what the story is and all that, I was like, this guy has never had to suffer any consequences. He either pays his way out or talks his way out of anything.
The writing was sharp, the role was messy, and Kieran didn't just play Roman Roy, he wore him like a second skin. On paper, he's smug, emotionally stunted, wildly inappropriate.
Did you hear what little brother said?
You stupid you piece of
But Kieran managed to find the cracks. He played Roman as someone who's been humiliated more than he lets on. There's a desperation underneath the vulgarity, a longing to be seen that gets buried in every sarcastic jab.
I'm getting a divorce. It's a sad, sad day when love dies.
What could have been a cartoon became a fully realized man-child unraveling in real time.
Send you a picture of his by mistake.
Well, it's pretty obvious. Thank you, Pinky. Go on.
Okay.
Roman!
Jesus.
Even when the writing went to darker places, whether it was the trauma, laced outbursts, or the sudden vulnerability, he handled it without overselling. He had this way of making Roman's worst moments feel grounded, even relatable, like he was less a villain and more of a guy who never learned how to process pain.
Seriously, don't believe you. Seriously, don't believe you.
I think that you don't want to do this, Rome, because you're scared of conflict.
The subtlety, the patience, that emotional recoil, that's what separated his performance from the rest. And it's not just that he was great in Succession. It's that he was consistently great.
It's Discord, man. Discord makes my cord.
One minute you wanted to punch him, the next you felt something closer to pity. And that's not easy to pull off, especially when you're surrounded by powerhouses like Brian Cox and Jeremy Strong. Kieran never tried to match their intensity. He simply countered it.
I saw your little interview.
Right, yeah, we don't have to dissect that.
Oh, my daddy. I never figured you for a
Oh. Wow.
He played low to the ground, never reaching too hard. And then the awards followed.
I love you so much. Thank you.
Emmy nods, Golden Globes, he finally won one.
I'm here because Jesse Eisenberg wrote an incredible script.
And the whole time, he still looked slightly uncomfortable being there. His speeches felt like someone handed the mic to the wrong guy. He fidgets, he shrugs, he cracks jokes to deflect the emotion.
It, Pedro. Sorry. Mine.
He's one of the few actors where the distance between the role and the man feels razor thin. Not because Roman is who he is, but because Kieran doesn't pretend to be something he's not. He's got that unfiltered edge, like he hasn't rehearsed his likability in the mirror. When you see him in interviews, there's no agenda. He doesn't want to be your favorite. And ironically, that's what makes him your favorite. And yet, he's carved out a lane for himself that's almost airtight. He's the kind of guy who says he's bad at making friends, but ends up with everyone in the room wanting to be around him.
He cast me without auditioning me or seeing me in anything ever. He's still like, yeah, I know, yeah, what's wrong?
Look at his essence.
His essence. How could you not?
The industry finally caught up to what fans had been saying for years. This guy isn't just good, he's on a different level.
And the Oscar goes to Kieran Culkin.
And I've already lost whatever speech I prepared, 20 seconds or whatever.
It's the kind of validation that for most doesn't ever come. No gimmicks, no branding, just raw talent and a lived-in sense of humility. That's Kieran Culkin.
Inward, like in wardrobe.
Looks me in the face, tells me how I can do it better. And I'm like, I got notes for you too.